When my oldest sister Claire drove up from Austin, she stopped cold in the doorway of a home that once echoed with music. No furniture, no dishes, no picture of my late wife on the mantel. No warm scent of cooking, just the hollow hum of an empty freezer and the shallow breathing of a woman who's seen 68 years. Claire turned to me, tears welling. "Mary, you're existing like this on a $6,500 pension every month." Before I could speak, Derek, my son, emerged from the hallway, arms folded, voice flat as concrete. "I transfer all of Mom's pension to my partner. He handles it better than Mom can." The room went silent. Claire stood motionless for several heartbeats, then carefully removed her jacket, folded it precisely, her expression calm in a way that felt dangerous. And what she did in the next moments would shake Derek to his core and transform this home into a courthouse of truth. If you're still here, tell me where you're listening from. Every comment matters on this path. And if this resonates with you, don't forget to like so it reaches further. I'm married, 68, a widow, living in a modest house outside Sacramento, California. This single-story ranch was where my wife Alina and I built our world with a rose garden she pruned every weekend. After Alina passed, I lived alone for nearly 12 years, depending on a $6,500 monthly pension from my 39 years as a hospital administrator at Mercy General Medical Center. I never imagined that at this stage of life, in modern California, I could know real hunger. When Claire walked through that door, I saw pure shock in her face. She circled the front room, scanning as if searching for something recognizable. The navy couch that used to face the fireplace. The pine dining set Alina and I bought our first year together. The anniversary photo in the entryway. All vanished. She pulled open the refrigerator. Nothing. Just a half-empty carton of orange juice, a small tub of margarine, and 3 packets of ramen. The kitchen felt abandoned. No coffee aroma, no microwave hum, no trace of the life that once made this the warmest place I knew. Claire spun around, her voice rough. "Mary, where are you? Where's the sister I grew up with? Tell me what's happening here." I could only bite my lip. Any explanation felt insufficient under the gaze of someone who once called me the toughest big sister she knew. I didn't have words to explain. I just looked around the hollow house and wondered, how did I allow this? Then Derek appeared. My only son, now 41, walked in with assured posture and a slight smirk. Claire stared at him, waiting for answers. And Derek said in a tone so casual it was chilling, "I transfer all of Mom's pension to Marcus. He manages it better than Mom does. Mom just needs to relax and stay out of financial decisions." Claire blinked, stunned. She looked at me, waiting for my response, but I just stood there, too drained to protest. Derek sat down, poured himself water while I watched my bony hands begin to tremble. I knew Claire wanted to erupt, but instead she slowly removed her jacket, folded it with precision, and set it on the counter. Her eyes were frighteningly composed, the kind of composure that means truth is about to surface. "All right," she said quietly. "We're going to talk, but not how you expect." No one in that house understood that moment marked the beginning of reclaiming my entire existence. Before Claire arrived, I had endured 14 months of torment in my own home. After Derek lost his position, he and his partner Marcus moved in temporarily to reduce expenses. I believed that. I still remember the day they arrived. Marcus smiling warmly, saying, "Don't stress, Mary. I'll help with meals and upkeep. We'll be like one big household." I believed him. I believed everything, but temporarily quickly became indefinitely. Soon I was pushed out of my own master suite to accommodate them. I relocated to the smaller guest room, telling myself that's what mothers do. Then it escalated. Marcus suggested I hand my debit card to Derek so he could feel productive. I hesitated, but seeing my son slumped on the futon, head hung low, shoulders carrying the weight of unemployment, I couldn't refuse. I surrendered the card, and with it, I surrendered my financial autonomy. Initially, things seemed acceptable. Utilities were paid punctually. The fridge stayed stocked. Derek even gave me $80 and said, "Treat yourself to something nice," but weeks later, the account password changed and I couldn't view the statements anymore. When I questioned it, Derek laughed. "Don't stress, Mom. I handle it better. Older people get scammed constantly. Let me take care of it." I wanted to trust, so I stayed silent. The food began to diminish. The things I enjoyed disappeared. Turkey, shrimp, fresh vegetables. In their place were instant meals, saltines, in what Marcus called sensible portions whenever I asked what. He said, "At your age, eating lighter is healthier, and fresh ingredients are pricey." I didn't realize I was being systematically starved. The house was stripped gradually. The couch where Alina read novels, the pine set where we hosted Thanksgiving, the anniversary photo, the mementos from a lifetime of work all vanished to cover expenses. So I started documenting. I hid a small journal in an old cabinet where I recorded dates, amounts, and what disappeared. I also concealed a backup phone just to photograph and capture conversations when I sensed something was wrong. I thought I was being prudent. Like Alina used to say, nobody protects you like you protect yourself, Mary. But honestly, I just wanted to believe that if anything happened, at least I'd have evidence and a slim hope that someone would notice I was being eroded. That someone turned out to be Claire. Claire has always been observant. After Alina passed, she called regularly, but for over 8 months, I avoided her calls, always claiming I was occupied or fine. I was terrified that if she visited, she'd see what I couldn't face. But she came anyway. And what she witnessed in this house, the emptiness, the chill, and my hollowed-out appearance told her it wasn't just a difficult phase. I remember that moment like a snapshot. The late afternoon light slicing through the window onto the bare floor, and Claire saying quietly, "Mary, this isn't a family matter anymore. This is criminal." She pulled out her phone and called the 2 people she trusted most. Attorney Benjamin Cross, Alina's longtime friend, and Dr. Nina Patel, a geriatric specialist she collaborated with in an elder advocacy program. I didn't stop her. I just sat there, hands clasped, heart beating slow and heavy. From the moment Claire ended that call, I knew my silent, compliant existence was finished. Today, every word and every invisible wound would be dragged into the light. A knock came within minutes. Claire turned to me, voice firm but gentle. "Ziz, today is when this stops. They turned you into a ghost, but I'm going to help you become yourself again." I gripped the arm of the chair, looking around the empty house. For the first time in months, the atmosphere felt different. Not the cold scent of an empty freezer, but the fragrance of hope creeping back in. I lifted my head, straightened my shoulders, and released a long breath. "All right," I said, voice low but clear. "If the truth needs speaking, I'll speak it. From the beginning. From the day I thought my love could repair everything." And so in an empty house in Sacramento, my story began, the story of a mother who loved her son so much she lost herself, and the journey to reclaim her life from her own misplaced faith. I once believed that if I worked diligently and lived honorably, life would return fairness. Across 39 years as an administrator at Riverside Community Hospital, I worked through endless night shifts, emergency alerts, and hands that went numb in my grip. I was accustomed to the smell of disinfectant, the squeak of stretcher wheels on linoleum, the fluorescent lights falling on faces waiting for relief. People used to ask me, "Mary, aren't you afraid of night shifts?" I smiled. I was afraid of the dark, but I was more afraid of not being there when someone needed help. I started at the hospital when I was 29, 3 years after marrying Alina. She was an architect. I worked irregular hours, often leaving at twilight and returning when dawn broke. Whenever I came home, she'd leave a warm pot of tea and a note on the counter. "Remember to eat breakfast." I left muffins in the oven. Our life was simple but complete. Alina wasn't talkative, but her eyes were warm, like every ounce of my exhaustion mattered. Then one May morning, light drizzle falling, I was finishing a shift when a call came from an unknown number. The voice on the line trembled. "Mrs. Mary, I'm sorry. Your wife had a massive stroke. We did everything possible." I collapsed in the hospital corridor, the hallway where I'd helped save so many lives. But this time, the one who left was part of me. By the time I arrived, they said she'd only had time to say one last phrase to the attending nurse. "Tell my wife I'm proud of her." I've carried that sentence ever since. I don't remember how I survived the days that followed. The funeral passed in a blur. Friends, colleagues, neighbors came to offer sympathy, then departed. I cleaned the house we used to fill with laughter and folded shirts that still carried her scent. I thought that without Derek, I might not have had a reason to wake each morning. Derek was 24 then, a graduate student studying marketing. He had Alina's thoughtful, steady eyes. I poured my love and my grief into him. Every time I went to work, I told myself, one more shift, one more week. So my son doesn't struggle, I accepted more nights, eliminated every personal expense, rarely went anywhere. No new clothes, no salon visits, no trips for nearly a decade. Everything so Derek could graduate and reach further than I ever could. I remember his graduation day vividly. I went straight from the hospital to the auditorium, still wearing my administrative badge that smelled like hand sanitizer. When Derek stepped forward to receive his degree, he scanned the crowd and found me standing in the rear, smiling with exhausted eyes. He held the diploma high and shouted, "Mom, I did it!" The entire hall applauded. I smiled too, tears falling before I could stop them. For the first time in years, my sacrifice felt meaningful. After that, Derek quickly secured a position at a prominent consulting firm downtown. I was proud he was young, capable, full of potential. He started discussing the future, about partnership, buying property. I nodded, both happy and anxious. I still remember the night he brought him home. Marcus Lee, someone I met at a networking event, he said. He's in digital marketing. Smart and driven. Marcus extended his hand to shake mine, voice smooth but distant. "Nice to meet you, Mary." He was striking dark hair, perfectly styled, a charcoal blazer, expensive cologne. His gaze made me feel both acknowledged and evaluated. I maintained a polite smile, served tea, and tried to believe every ambitious person carries a degree of intensity. That night, while washing dishes, I asked Derek, "Are you certain?" "He seems a little distant," he laughed. "Mom, he's just reserved. Marcus lost his family young. He's been independent since his teens. I think you'll appreciate him." I didn't want to disappoint him. I figured maybe he just needed acceptance. I'd read somewhere that people who seem guarded are often the most afraid of vulnerability. So I opened my heart and welcomed Marcus like the family I never had. 8 months later, they married in a small but sophisticated ceremony at St. Michael's. I covered half the wedding expenses, the savings from nearly 2 decades of extra shifts, because I wanted Derek to have a beautiful beginning. I remember the moment he held his partner's hand. Eyes bright like possibility itself had opened wide. I stood in the church corridor, watching them walk out under falling rose petals, feeling both joyful and hollow. The only woman I ever loved now rested beneath cold ground, and my only son was beginning his own journey. After the ceremony, Marcus said to me, "I don't have family anymore. Could you think of me as your son too?" I nodded, moved. "Of course, Marcus. Your family," he smiled, but in that smile was a fleeting coldness. The early months after the wedding were calm. Every Sunday, they visited for dinner with desserts or wine. They discussed career plans, and sometimes Marcus would say softly, "I hope we adopt soon so you won't be lonely." Those words softened me. I started to imagine a grandchild running through the roses, laughter filling the spaces between me and my solitude. Time passed and everything seemed perfect. Derek advanced. Marcus was recognized at work. I was proud of them and maintained my simple life until one November afternoon. Derek appeared, pale. I was preparing dinner when the door burst open and he collapsed into a chair, head in his hands. "What happened?" I asked, heart racing. He looked up, eyes red. "They downsized. They're dissolving our team." "I lost my job, Mom." I stood motionless. My son, the one who promised he'd support me, was crumpled before me like a lost child. I placed my hand on his shoulder. "It's okay, son. It's temporary. You're excellent at what you do." He shook his head. "I've got student loans, car payments." "Marcus is going to be so disappointed." I heard fear in his voice. Not fear of unemployment, fear of losing the image Marcus admired. That night, I didn't sleep. I made tea and watched the city lights. The worry for my son rose in me like a flood. As a mother, nothing hurts more than watching your child despair. I thought of my night shifts, of staying awake to help strangers, and told myself, if I could help them, I can help my own son. The next day, Derek said they'd move in for a few months to save on housing costs. I agreed immediately, without hesitation. Deep down, a small warning flickered, the kind you develop after witnessing too many tragedies in healthcare, but I pushed it away. I saw one thing: my son needed me. And like always, I was ready to do anything to help him rise again. I didn't know that in that moment, That harmless agreement. I opened the door to a nightmare that would last over a year, where I'd lose money, memories, and finally myself. Back then, I believed that if a mother just loved enough, the family would hold together. I didn't know some children don't need more love. They just want complete control of what's in their mother's hands. And that was the beginning of everything. Just a few months. Mom, once I secure a new position, Marcus and I will relocate when Derek said it. It sounded weightless, and I, sleepless for nights worrying about him, nodded immediately. I had no clue that from that moment on, my single-story home, the one containing my life and my memories with Alina, would stop being home in the way it used to be. I remember the morning they moved in. Derek brought several suitcases. Marcus drove a silver luxury sedan with the trunk filled with expensive luggage, designer shoes, leather bags, and boxes of grooming products. He beamed, sweet as syrup. "Thank you, Mary. It feels so peaceful here, like a little retreat." I smiled, trying to believe my son-in-law was truly appreciative. I took them to the room that used to be mine and Alina's. It still smelled like cedar and old sunshine. I intended to preserve it, but Derek put a hand on my shoulder. "This room is larger. You should stay in the guest room for convenience. Marcus and I need space for work, and it's easier for me to care for you." It sounded so logical. I didn't argue. I packed up and moved to the small room that used to be storage. That first night, Marcus cooked spaghetti carbonara, a recipe I learned from a colleague's partner in Nevada. He smiled brightly, wore a brand new apron, and told me to sit and relax. Watching him navigate the kitchen warmed me. I imagined Alina smiling somewhere, too. Dinner was pleasant. We discussed Derek applying to new firms, about starting fresh. I slept better than I had in months. But the peace didn't last. By the second week, I heard Marcus's complaints. "You buy this kind of toilet paper, Mary, it irritates my skin then. The kitchen appliances are too outdated. Let's replace everything. Gas ranges aren't safe." He stopped calling me Mary and started using "just you" every time I heard it. I felt pushed out of my own family. I tried to stay accommodating, cleaning, cooking, doing laundry, even as I grew weaker. One day, I found Marcus opening my bedroom door without knocking. He gave a small laugh. "Oh, I just needed tape. Don't worry. Think of me like family." I forced a smile, but it stung. That was the only room left that felt like mine. One evening, while I was mending an old cardigan, Derek came in. He looked drained, dark shadows heavy under his eyes. "Mom," he hesitated. "I know you keep your pension in your account. If you let me manage it temporarily, you won't have to worry about bills, property insurance, taxes. I can help keep things organized so you can rest." I looked at my son, the one who cried in my arms at his mother's funeral, and my heart softened. "Are you certain, Derek? I don't want to be a burden." He smiled and held my hand. "Do you trust me? I just want you to rest. Let me be useful." So I agreed. The next morning, I handed him my bank card and quietly shared the PIN. I didn't realize I was handing over the last key to my independence. The first week proceeded fine. Bills were paid promptly. The fridge was stocked. Derek even gave me $80. "I know you like flowers. Visit the market. You deserve a little happiness." I smiled. Maybe I'd worried unnecessarily. But by the third week, I couldn't access my bank account. When I inquired, Derek answered gently. "I changed the password. Mom, the bank requires two-factor authentication now. I'll manage it. You don't need to stress." I hesitated, then nodded. I always thought trusting my son was right. Meals started changing. No more roast or stew smells. Instead, instant meals, crackers, and quick bites. Marcus said, "Too much fat isn't good for seniors. You should simplify portions." I gave a thin smile, even as my stomach ached every night. One morning, I went to the market to buy fruit. When I swiped my card, the machine said, "Insufficient funds." I froze. In my entire working life, I'd never heard those words. At home, I asked Derek. He spoke quickly. I withdrew some to cover a credit card. "Don't worry, I'll replace it soon." I stayed quiet. I didn't want to turn dinner into conflict. Meanwhile, Marcus started appearing with new things. Designer handbags, fresh blazers, Italian loafers I'd only seen in magazines. He said a friend gave them. He works at a warehouse sale. I knew warehouse sales don't distribute gifts like that. But I said nothing. I kept thinking if I stayed quiet, things would improve. Derek changed too. He dressed sharper, said he had interviews. When I asked where, he spoke vaguely. At night, I sat in my small room listening to their laughter, upstairs the pop of a wine cork. The television. I told myself, my son is still happy. That's enough. Food kept diminishing. Fruit disappeared. Milk became scarce. I adapted to one small meal, or splitting a packet of ramen to last the day. My body weakened, but I didn't speak up. I feared loneliness more than hunger. I was afraid if I complained, they'd leave and the house would be as empty as those first years after Alina died. Sometimes friends called to check in. I always said, I'm fine. My son moved back in. It's wonderful I heard my own voice tremble, like I was recounting someone else's story. One afternoon, I noticed the brass lamp Alina bought in 1983 was gone. When I asked, Marcus said casually, I sold it. Old wiring, nobody uses it. Got over 80 for it. I stayed silent. A few days later, the pine table was gone. Then the couch set. Then our anniversary frame. I looked around and saw only my fingernail scratches left on the wall where that photo used to hang. That night, while they went out to dinner with friends, I sat alone in the kitchen, staring at the empty room. The yellow bulb spilled over chipped paint, and in the fridge door's reflection, I saw a gaunt older woman with frizzy hair wearing a cardigan with a stretched neckline. I tried to remember the last time I heard myself laugh. Maybe the first night they moved in. I sat there a long time. Then I opened the drawer and took out a small tan notebook where I began documenting every detail. The date, the time, the amount of money, the item that disappeared. An old administrator's habit: write everything down in case you need to verify later. I didn't think of it as evidence, just thought that if I started to forget someday, I'd still know what happened. But the more I wrote, the more I realized the empty space in my life was widening, like a wound silently spreading. Every page was one lost item, one more piece of control taken, and one part of my dignity erased. That night, I wrote one line in red ink. September 18th, lost the anniversary photo frame. Don't know if they sold it, but for certain I lost more than that. And I understood maybe everything really had started slipping through my fingers. I don't remember the exact day I began to suspect. Only that one morning when the sun just touched the windows, I decided to withdraw a little cash to buy fruit and flowers for Alina's memorial. It had been a long time. I'd been living on whatever portions they gave me. I put on my old jacket, went to the ATM near the grocery store, slid in my card, and entered the PIN. The screen lit up, then stopped at $42. I thought I read it wrong. I pulled out the card, wiped my glasses, and tried again. Same thing. $42 when I get a $6,500 pension each month, deposited automatically on the 8th. It was only the 14th. I stood frozen at the machine, my hands shaking so hard I had to grip the edge of the screen. Someone behind me urged me to hurry, so I bowed my head, pulled the card, and staggered outside. The midday sun was blazing, but I felt as cold as if I'd just walked out of a morgue. When I got home, Derek was watching TV, feet up on the ottoman, earbuds in. I set my bag down and asked straight out, Derek, I just checked my account. There's $42 left. Explain. He didn't look at me, just pulled out an earbud and shrugged. I pulled some out for expenses. Mom, had to cover some obligations. You wouldn't understand. Times are tough. I tried to stay calm. How much did you take? He turned, eyes sharpening. Can you stop micromanaging? You live in this house and don't lack anything, and you still complain. You're ungrateful. I was speechless. Ungrateful, that word felt like a blade to the chest. May, the one who raised him with tired hands, who pulled triple shifts so he could pay tuition, now called ungrateful by my own son. The next day was my close friend Rita's birthday, a former colleague from the hospital. For 28 years, we'd always exchange small gifts: a bouquet, a book. I said, Derek, I want to withdraw a little money to buy Rita a gift. Just $15. He was scrolling his phone. Didn't bother to look up. No, I'm allocating that money. You don't need to give gifts anymore. It's fine that they know you're struggling. I went quiet, not because I was struggling, but because I knew there was nothing left to say. My meals shrank to the point of absurd. Half a packet of instant noodles split into 2 meals. a little boiled spinach, sometimes a leftover cracker. I ate slowly, stretching each bite so I wouldn't feel like I was being starved. Once I asked, "Marcus, why is there no fruit, milk, or protein lately?" He gave a small smile without looking up from his tablet. "At your age, eating less is healthier. Too much protein strains the kidneys. I'm just thinking about you." I knew that was an excuse. Every night they ordered takeout Thai food, sushi, pasta. I sat in my room and smelled the spices drift down the hallway, my stomach growling, my heart pounding. Once I heard Marcus laugh loudly. "Good thing she doesn't eat much. If she ate like us, we'd never afford it." They both laughed. I lay still in the dark, tears soaking the pillow, not sure if it was from hunger or humiliation. My weight plummeted 32 pounds, lost in under 7 months. I got dizzy whenever I stood up. I ran out of blood pressure medication and asked Derek, "Can you pick up my prescription? The bottle is in the drawer." He said, "It's expensive. I'll order it online when there's a discount." 4 weeks passed. No medication. I started having trouble breathing. In the mornings, my heart raced, but I still tried to smile whenever they walked by. I didn't want them to see I was weak. Weak people get abandoned. One afternoon, Rita came to visit. She brought lemon bars, my favorite. When she stepped in, I was so happy I almost cried. But before I could say anything, Marcus came down the stairs with a plastered-on smile. "Hi there. She's really exhausted. Please let her rest. She can't have sweets." Rita looked at me with worried eyes, but I only managed a small nod, pretending to agree. Marcus took the bag with the lemon bars, gave one more smile, then escorted my friend out. When the door closed, I heard the paper bag hit the trash bin. That night, I sat in my room, the light so dim my shadow stretched long across the wall. I realized they were isolating me deliberately. No one could see me. No one knew what was happening in this house. I was no longer the homeowner, no longer a mother, just a faint shape, living on the pity of the very people draining me. I started keeping a journal. Each page had 3 columns: date, meal, amount. I logged it carefully, like the old days as an administrator tracking budgets and supplies. June 19th, ate half a packet of noodles, $0. June 20th, 8 crackers, water, $0. June 21st, Derek withdrew more money, said utilities, no documentation. My journal thickened day by day like a treatment chart for a patient being treated with cruelty. I didn't know why I was writing. Maybe to remember, maybe to prove I existed and how I was treated. Then one sleepless night, I sat by the window, watching the streetlight's yellow glow slip through the curtain. In my head, I heard Alina what she told me before she died. "Mary, don't let anyone turn your kindness into a weapon." My hands shaking, I opened the drawer and took out the backup phone I'd hidden since the day Derek moved. I turned on the recorder. From that day, I started recording every conversation in the house. When Derek told Marcus, "She's old, she won't remember anything," when Marcus said, "Let her eat less. We'll save a fortune," when they talked about accounts, about selling a few antique pieces, I kept the phone in my jacket pocket, pretending to tidy up or sit quietly. Their voices slipped into the mic, clear enough to chill me. Some nights I played it back, my chest aching like it was being crushed. I didn't recognize my son's voice anymore. He used to say, "I love you more than anything." Now it was flat, calculating, indifferent. I began to change. No arguing, no asking, no crying. I just observed, wrote, and moved like a ghost in my own house. In the mornings, I still greeted them with a smile. At night, when they slept, I quietly checked old email statements I still had access to. The numbers drained away like water through fingers, more than $85,000 gone. I didn't know where it went. Only saw charges for boutique, design project, renovation. I understood this wasn't about Derek struggling anymore. This was a deliberate plan. By month 14, I stood in front of the mirror and didn't recognize myself. Wrinkled face, gray hair, sunken eyes, sallow skin. The woman in the mirror looked like a patient I'd once helped, except I had no one helping me. That night, I added to the journal. Month 14, $42 left. No one knows. No one asks. I'm not afraid anymore. I just want to live long enough to watch them fall. And I swore with whatever strength I had left that I would not let Alina be ashamed of her wife. I would live. I would remember. And when the time came, I would make them pay for every packet of noodles I swallowed with tears. I don't know how Claire figured it out. Maybe the calls I kept dodging, the "I'm fine," I said too quickly, or just a sister's instinct built from growing up together. Either way, that morning when the door swung open, I saw Claire standing there in the doorway, eyes horrified as if she'd walked into something unbelievable. She didn't speak, she just stood there. Morning light poured across the threshold, lighting the room where my anniversary photo with Alina used to hang. Now, just a bare wall pocked with nail holes. She walked in slowly, shoes tapping the cold tile floor. I lay on a bare mattress, wrapped in a thin blanket, shivering because the draft had slipped through the window crack the night before. Claire's eyes stopped on my gaunt body. Then she turned away like she didn't want me to see her tears. "Mary," her voice broke. "You're living like this." I tried to say I'm fine, but my throat locked. I wasn't fine, and we both knew it. Claire went to the kitchen and opened the fridge. One bottle of water, an empty margarine tub, half an onion. She opened a cabinet, then turned to me, voice low and sharp as a knife. "You get $6,500 pension each month, right?" I nodded. "Then where's the money?" Before I could answer, Derek came downstairs, shirt unbuttoned, hair messy, face annoyed from being woken early. "What's going on?" Claire turned to face her nephew head-on. "You want to know what's going on? I want to know why my sister is living like a homeless person in her own house." Derek smirked, arms crossed. "Mom gives me all her pension. I just use it to invest so the whole family benefits. And those old things, we sold them to clear space." He said it as calmly as if he were discussing the weather. Claire was quiet for a few seconds. Then she slowly took off her jacket, folded it neatly, and set it on the empty counter. Her eyes were calm, but underneath was a banked fury waiting to explode. She spoke slowly, enunciating each word. "You just confessed, Derek. And before we go any further, let me remind you everything you say is being remembered. Sometimes justice doesn't come from a courtroom. It comes from someone who stands up and says, 'Enough.'" Did your chest tighten when Claire said that? Write your thoughts about that moment. I want to know if you felt the power of composure the way I did. Marcus came down the stairs in a silk robe, coffee cup in hand. He looked around, annoyed. "What's with all the commotion? We have company." Claire turned with a cold smile. "Oh, you must be Marcus. Perfect. This is convenient. I'm Claire Whittaker, Mary's sister. I'm here to take my sister's life back." I gave Claire a small nod. It was time. In my hand was the backup phone I'd hidden for over, containing all the recordings, photos of the things sold, and copies of bank statements. I set it on the table, light as placing a bomb. Claire looked at me, her eyes softening. "You did well." Derek forced a laugh. "Mom recorded what?" "Come on, Mom. You're old. You think you're a detective." Claire answered for me, her voice oddly calm. "No, but the police might be interested now." The air in the house thickened. I could hear the clock ticking on the wall. Claire pulled out her phone and dialed. "Ben, I need you here now. Marcus and Derek are both here. And bring a doctor. My sister's depleted." 25 minutes later, Attorney Benjamin crossed Alina's old friend and doctor. Nina Patel arrived. Benjamin wore a navy suit, steady as ever. Nina had a stethoscope and quick, professional eyes. Benjamin looked around and sighed. "I never thought I'd be back here like this." He turned to Derek and Marcus. "We need all of Mrs. Mary's bank statements and transfer records for the past 14 months right now." Derek reacted like he'd been struck. "I'm not obligated." Claire cut in, voice low and firm. "Yes, you are. This is my sister's property. She's in a state of malnutrition and financial exploitation. If you don't cooperate, I'm calling the police." Marcus tried to look composed, but his lips trembled. "You're slandering us. Mary gave money to her son. That's not a crime." Benjamin set his briefcase on the table, opened it, sheet by sheet. "True, but exploiting an elder's assets through coercion and financial control is a federal offense. And I believe we have enough evidence here." "Doctor." Nina knelt beside me, took my blood pressure, and asked quietly, "How have you been eating?" I gave a small smile. "Half a packet of noodles a day." She shook her head, jotted notes, then said softly to Benjamin, "Stage 2 malnutrition. She needs to be hospitalized soon." Derek started to unravel. "You don't understand. I was just trying to help my mom. I'll print the statements later. Claire stepped forward, facing my son head-on. No, right now. Marcus set the cup down and stepped in front of his husband, voice rising. You don't get to order people around in this house. Claire answered crisply. This house is in Mary's name. And right now, she's been stripped of control by you two. I have every right to protect her. Benjamin plugged the USB I'd handed him into his laptop. The screen filled with audio files, photos, and old statements. In one recording, Marcus's voice was crystal clear. Let her eat less. She's old. Eating more is just wasting money. Then Derek's voice. Selling the stuff in the house is fine. She doesn't use it. The room went silent. Marcus went pale. Derek lowered his head, lips pressed tight. Benjamin stopped the audio and looked up, his voice calm but cold. I'll give you a chance to cooperate. Provide all bank statements, investment details, and a list of items sold. If not, I'll forward this file to the Sacramento police today. I looked at my son, the one who cried in my arms at his mother's funeral, now just a stranger shrinking in a chair. I didn't feel angry anymore. Just a hollow ache. Marcus tried to salvage it. We just wanted to invest in a business. It was going to help the whole family. Benjamin said nothing, just held up a sheet. These are purchase orders and credit card receipts in your name, drawn from Mrs. Mary's account. I count more than $85,000. You still want to call that investment? No one answered. Claire hit record on her phone. From now on, everything you say will be saved. I pulled out a small paper. I'd prepared the backup password to my old statement email. I set it on the table. Here I said, voice soft but clear. If they delete anything, there's still a copy. I'm not as foolish as they think. Claire gave a small smile, not happy, but relieved. She turned to me. You did great, Mary. Now they know the helpless prey still has teeth. The room's energy shifted. Derek and Marcus were no longer in control. Their eyes darted like cornered animals. Benjamin gathered the files and said briefly, the police will be in touch soon. First, Mrs. Mary needs to be taken to the hospital. I'll arrange it now. When they left, I looked around the empty room. Same four walls, but for the first time in 14 months, I felt my own breath return. I turned to Claire. She took my hand and squeezed. Sis, she said, you're not alone anymore. I nodded, eyes stinging. Outside, the Sacramento sky was gray and the wind cut cold, but in my chest, a light flickered back on. For the first time, I wasn't afraid. I just felt calm because I knew the nightmare had finally started to end. Benjamin had just collected the initial acknowledgement when he paused, eyes landing on a stack of papers Derek had left half-tucked in a folder. Let me see that. Derek flinched. That's just some realtor flyers. Benjamin opened it and flipped quickly through. Then he stood still for a few seconds, taking a deep breath. No, not flyers. This is a preliminary brokerage agreement from Century Realty, proposing to sell this house for $318,000. Plan to list officially in 4 weeks. The air around me felt heavy. A chill ran down my spine. Sell the house, I blurted, almost in disbelief. But this is my house. I never signed anything. Benjamin nodded slightly, his voice metallic. I know, and that's the problem. He pulled a few more sheets from the folder photocopies with a faint blue stamp. The signature here says Mary, but it's nothing like your real signature. This is forgery. They weren't just taking your accounts. They planned to sell your property. Claire slammed her hand on the table, making Marcus's coffee cup shatter on the floor. God, my sister was about to be thrown out on the street. Her voice shook with fury, somehow still cold and controlled. Derek shot up. It's not like that. I just wanted to sell and buy a smaller place. It'd be easier. She doesn't need a big house. Claire spun around, eyes blazing. What did you just say? She doesn't need. Listen to yourself. You call that love? Benjamin cut in, voice low and sharp as a blade. You've just admitted to attempting to sell an elder's property without legal authorization. In California, that falls under elder financial abuse. And combined with forged signatures, this is forgery, a criminal offense. Derek went pale. He looked to Marcus for help, but Marcus had his head down, hands shaking. Benjamin closed the folder and slid it back toward them. Before I hand all of this to the Sacramento prosecutors, I'm giving you one last chance. He looked straight at Derek. You will sign a written admission of what you did. Agree to a repayment plan of $1,300 a month for 52 months. And leave this house within 2 hours. If not, this goes to the district attorney today. The room fell into a deadly silence. I heard wind whistling through the window frame, the clock ticking, and my own heart pounding. Derek trembled, trying to take Marcus's hand, but Marcus pulled away. "I'm your family," Derek cried, voice cracking with desperation. Claire, who had stood still till then, turned slowly. Her voice was deep and resonant, each word etched into the tile. "Family doesn't starve each other. Family doesn't take the last dollar from the woman who gave them life to buy leather bags and designer blazers." Derek hung his head. For the first time, I saw him cry. Not from deep remorse, but because he knew he'd lost it all: his reputation, his money, and his mother's trust. Marcus wiped his tears. We just wanted a chance. We thought we could rebuild. I didn't think it would get this bad." Benjamin answered evenly. "A chance is not stealing someone else's future. Mrs. Mary gave you a chance the day you stepped into this house, and you tore it up yourself." I looked at them, feeling hollow. Memories flooded in the warm wedding. Derek's smile at graduation. The morning I baked bread, the first time Marcus called me family. Now it was all dust. I spoke, quiet but clear. "Your chance was built on my instant noodles. On nights I curled up listening to you laugh upstairs. If that's love, then I pray no one ever loves me like that again." Derek broke down crying, fell to his knees, but Claire didn't budge. She pulled out a chair, set the paper on the table, and pushed a pen toward them. "Right now." Derek's hand shook as he picked up the pen. Marcus bit his lip, tears falling onto the page and blurring the ink. Benjamin checked his watch. "You have exactly 2 hours to pack up. After that, the police will arrive. I don't want to see either of you within 15 miles of Mrs. Mary's house." No one answered. Claire turned to Benjamin, speaking low. "Make sure they don't have time to delete data or pull more money." Benjamin nodded. "I've already sent a temporary freeze request. All accounts connected to Marcus Lee Consulting and Derek Jenkins will be locked within 24 hours. Doctor." Nina stood by, resting a hand on my shoulder. "You need to go to the hospital now. I don't want your blood pressure over 155 for another minute." I nodded and slowly stood. My legs trembled, but they were steadier than ever before. Claire helped me into my jacket, murmured, "You finished the hardest part. Now it's time to take back what's yours." I looked around the room one more time: bare walls, cold tile floors, a place that once held laughter, now echoing with the sound of justice. Benjamin gathered the files and sealed all the evidence statements, brokerage papers, forged POA, the audio files. He labeled it evidence case #3128. The rip of the tape sounded like sealing an old era, the era of trust betrayed. Marcus sank into a chair, face in his hands. Derek stood frozen, as if all the strength had been drained from him. I said nothing more, not because I had no words, but because my silence was the heaviest sentence I could deliver. Claire opened the door. Noon sunlight spilled golden across the floor. I turned back one last time, then stepped out. Behind me, Benjamin said firmly, "From now on, everything goes by the law." My steps were slow, but no longer shaky. Each one sloughed off a bit of weight. I was no longer the woman forced to live in the dark, surviving on instant noodles. I was Mary, who had passed through hunger and humiliation and still stood up in the light. Claire's car was waiting at the curb. As I sat down, "Doctor." Nina wrapped the blood pressure cuff around my wrist one last time. "Still high, but more stable. Probably the adrenaline," she said, then smiled. "Or because you just won the first round." I looked out the window. Inside the house, 2 silhouettes were packing bags, faces drained. I felt no joy, no vindictive thrill, just the sense that it was time to end it. Claire started the engine and glanced. "Let's go. Hospital first, then my place. That house is getting locked up." I nodded. The car rolled forward, leaving behind the pale yellow house that had once been a home and then became a crime scene. And in the soft Sacramento sunlight that day, I felt one thing clearly. You don't need to shout to win. You just need to stand up straight and stop being afraid. The nightmare was over, and justice, late as it was opening the door. I was admitted to the hospital that same afternoon. The internal medicine doors swung open, and the familiar smell of antiseptic rushed in the scent I'd lived with for over 39 years as an administrator. But now it made me feel strangely small. They put me in a bed, started in Roman 4, checked my blood pressure, drew blood repeatedly. The drip ticked like a clock, slow and steady. I heard Dr. Nina tell the floor nurse, BP 88/58, severe anemia, elevated BUN, she's on the edge of multi-organ failure. A few more weeks and we wouldn't have made it. I lay still, eyes on the white ceiling. Never in my life did I think I'd hear those words about me. Claire sat beside me, hands clasped tight. She didn't speak, just stood to straighten my blanket now and then, or patted my hand. Whenever I dreamed I was lost in an empty house with no exit, she squeezed my hand harder, pulling me back to the present. On day 3, I fully woke from a fever. Claire was still there, reading a magazine she'd brought. A vase of fresh daisies sat on the corner of the table. She looked up when I opened my eye. "Did you sleep?" I nodded slightly. My voice was weak, but my heart was lighter. It's the first time I slept without hearing them argue. Benjamin visited on day 6. Same navy suit, briefcase full of papers. "Good news, Mary," he said as he pulled up a chair. "The court voided the forged POA and the bank approved the freeze. We're restoring the accounts." He opened a tablet and showed me a summary. "We can likely recover about $16,000 to $23,000 from remaining balances and liquidated assets from Marcus Lee Consulting. The rest was basically burned through by the business." I didn't feel regret. I asked softly, "What about the insurance?" Benjamin nodded. "We're reversing the beneficiary change. I've filed the formal request, and Derek no longer has access to the records." Claire put a hand on my shoulder. "Say, the tide's turning." I smiled faintly. Alina is probably exhaling somewhere. On day 7, Dr. Nina reviewed my labs. She shook her head, but this time with hope. "Numbers are improving, but Mary, you need at least 8 months of nutritional rehab. Your body's been depleted for a long time. I'll set a special diet and recommend therapy as well." I smiled lightly. "Doctor, I used to teach hospital staff that emotional wounds take longer to heal than physical ones. I guess it's my turn to learn that lesson again." Claire laughed, trying to sound upbeat. "If you're philosophizing, you're doing okay." That afternoon, Benjamin returned with another stack of papers. "Mary, I need your authorization to sell the Sacramento house. Once everything is finalized, the funds will go into a private account with Claire temporarily supervising." I looked out the window, late sun filtering through the sheer curtain, lighting the small scar on my wrist, a relic from long shifts ago. I nodded. "Sell it. I don't want to go back there. That house died with my trust." Claire hesitated. "You're sure?" "I'm sure," I said firmly. "I'll stay with you in Austin for a while. I need to learn how to live again before I think about being independent." She just nodded. No objections. Maybe because she knew that for the first time in years, I was speaking with my own will. That evening, a nurse brought in an envelope. "Someone left this at the front desk. It's from Derek Jenkins." I stared at the yellow envelope, the familiar handwriting. Claire moved to open it, but I raised a hand. "No, leave it. You don't want to know." "I already know, Claire." That letter could be an apology, an excuse, or a plea, but every word is too late. I set the envelope aside and turned away. From that moment, I decided to revoke Derek's visitation. I didn't want to see my son, not to punish him, but to protect the small piece I'd just reclaimed. On day 9, the doctor let me sit up and start walking around the room. Claire supported me, step by step, as gently as a sister helping her older sibling learn to walk again. When I got tired, she brewed herbal tea and read me cheerful bits of news from Austin, a new farmer's market, a free seniors art class, and the corner she planned to set up for me. Morning light just right for miniature succulent pots. I teared up not for the plants, but because for the first time, someone spoke about my future home without strings attached. On day 10, when the last Roman 4 line came out, I felt like my body had been freed. Claire sat across from me, smiling. "Tomorrow you're discharged. Austin, here we come." I pressed my lips together and nodded. "But before we go, I want to do one thing." I took the small notebook from the drawer, the journal where I'd tracked every day, meal, and dollar for 14 months. I opened to the last page and wrote, "Day 298. Oatmeal for breakfast. Not instant noodles. $0, but the feeling priceless. Claire smiled at me, and I broke down, truly cried. Not from pain, but from release. I cried for the cold noodle dinners, the dry crackers that stuck in my throat, the fear that clenched me whenever I heard their footsteps in the hall. All of it was receding like a shadow shrinking from the last light at the end of a tunnel. Doctor, Nina came in as I wiped my tears and smiled softly. Let it out, Mary. That's a good sign. If you can still cry, your heart still knows how to live. I squeezed her hand. Doctor, you didn't just save my life. You helped me believe life can start over at 68. That night, after everyone left, I turned on the bedside lamp and wrote my new life plan. Health, walk 20 minutes every morning. Eat 3 real meals. Finances, open a private account. Share details only with Claire and Benjamin. Legal safety, draft a new will. Define beneficiaries clearly and authorize the attorney to monitor any changes. I underlined the last line. No one gets to define my worth except me. When I finished, I looked out the window. Sacramento street lights still glowed, painting the sky a soft orange. Inside me, a new light was forming, small but steady. The next morning, Claire arrived early. She carefully packed my things and led me out. Before getting into the car, I glanced back at the hospital, a place I once thought I might never leave. I whispered to myself, this time, I'm not just leaving a hospital. I'm leaving the weaker version of me. As the car turned off the main road, I closed my eyes. I pictured a simple dinner in Austin, a small table, a plate of steamed vegetables, toast, and warm golden light. No shouting, no contempt, just peace. Thinking of that, I laughed through tears. I thought I'd lost everything, but now I knew I'd found the most important thing, the light at the end of the tunnel. I returned to the Sacramento house in mid-July, not to live, but to say goodbye. Claire had hired cleaners, painters, and a small furniture company to refresh the place before the sale. They worked hard. Walls painted a soft cream, new window panes, polished tile floors. The house looked almost reborn. But crossing the threshold, I still felt a cold in my chest that no coat of paint could soften. Everything was tidy, but to me, it wasn't a home anymore. The air still held familiar traces: dish soap, cedar, and a faint rose I used to love. Now the scent tightened my throat. Each room echoed with the sounds of my old steps at night, the hollow fridge door, the clink of a spoon against a bowl of cold noodles. Claire said, "You don't have to go in. I'll handle everything." I shook my head. No, if I don't close this door myself, it'll stay open in my mind. I walked through each room. The living room had a pale tan sofa now. The walls were clean, the lights were bright, but I could still see last year's shadow of me there, biting my lip to keep from crying when I heard Derek arguing. The kitchen shone, the counter gleamed, but I remembered every old knife mark where I sliced bread, and where they laid out bills I never understood. Benjamin arrived while I stood in the backyard. He carried his briefcase, that familiar calm face. "Mary," he said, "everything is finalized. I've set up a trust to manage the sale proceeds and the monthly repayments from Derek and Marcus. It will all transfer to you on schedule. No one can interfere." I nodded and thanked him. Claire stood quietly beside me, eyes following my movements. She understood I wasn't just handing over a house. I was handing over a part of my life. I took exactly 3 things. An old photo frame of Alina, the woman who told me, "Don't let anyone use family ties to push you out of your own home." A small box of Derek's childhood keepsakes, his first baseball card, a green marble, and a note he once wrote, "I'll take care of you when you're older." And finally, a stack of thank you letters from staff and patients I helped over 39 years, shaky handwriting. Short but sincere. Those were the memories I chose to keep, the only ones that didn't hurt. When the door shut behind me, I stood on the stoop as a light breeze brushed my hair. A strange feeling slipped in, part sadness, part relief. Claire locked the door and handed the key to Benjamin. "That's it," she said. I answered softly, "No, this is the beginning." 3 months later, I was living in Austin. The city had warm mornings, humid air, and the smell of barbecue on every corner. The little place Claire set up for me sat by a park lined with old oaks. My room faced the garden. Every morning I opened the window to cardinals and air with no trace of debt. The Sacramento house sold for $305,000 below market, a bit. but enough to close the past. After an internal review, the bank refunded $19,000 from fraudulent transactions. Benjamin sent monthly reports. Everything was transparent. As for Derek and Marcus, they made the first 3 payments exactly on time, $1,300 each. Full amount, no notes, no contact, and I didn't need anything more. I opened a new account at a different bank with 2-factor authentication. Every login required a code to my phone, the phone I bought myself, in my name, shared with no one. I called it a small symbol of freedom. Benjamin helped update my will everything clear. Claire as financial guardian if I lose capacity. The remainder to a support fund for retired healthcare workers, named the Alina and Mary Memorial Fund. Every morning, I woke at 6:00 a.m., brewed mint tea, and looked out at the park. I walked around the small pond, met older neighbors, and exchanged gentle smiles. No one knew what I'd been through, and I didn't need them to. I just wanted to breathe, walk, and feel my heart grow calm again. I relearned to cook the foods I love, not for anyone else, but for me. On day 1, I made chicken vegetable soup with toasted bread. When the scent filled the small kitchen, I burst into tears, not from sadness, but from the feeling of caring for myself. That meal was my first lesson in self-care, something I'd forgotten for 68 years. Claire liked to joke, "You're becoming a new Mary." I smiled. No, I'm just becoming who I used to be, the woman I lost in that family storm. At night before bed, I opened the little notebook now with new pages. I no longer tracked meal amounts, but joy reasons. August 3rd, Joy walked with a neighbor named Rosa. She told me about her orchids. August 4th, Joy made tomato soup and it wasn't too salty. August 5th, Joy slept a full 8 hours. No dreams. I never thought slept 8 hours would make me proud. For 14 months of fear, I never slept deeply, always half awake, flinching, afraid of doors opening, of strange footsteps. Now I could lie still, breathe in the clean pillowcase, hear the wind tap the window, and smile. One day Claire asked, "Do you ever miss Sacramento?" I answered, "No, I only miss who I used to be there, not the place." She nodded and said nothing more. She understood. I kept Alina's photo on my desk. Each night, I lit a small candle and told her about the day, not to memorialize, but to remind myself that people have truly loved me. Fall came early to Austin. Yellow leaves covered the porch. The wind carried the scent of coffee and pecan pie from the shop across the street. I wrapped myself in the scarf Claire gave me, sat by the window, and watched the sun go down. In that moment, I realized I was living, not just surviving. No more shouting, no more contempt, no more fear of an empty fridge. Just me, a 68-year-old woman, learning to love herself again. Step by step, I closed the notebook and exhaled. Life, even broken, can keep going. I don't know how many years are ahead, but I know that from now on, not a single day will be taken by anyone or by fear. And when night fell, I whispered like a prayer, "Thank you, Claire. Thank you, Alina. And thank you, wounds. You taught me to stand up." Then I turned off the light. No more Roman 4 lines. No more darkness of hunger or guilt. Just the first peaceful 8-hour sleep of my new life. I began therapy in early fall. On Dr. Nina's advice, she said, "Your body's okay now, Mary. It's your soul's turn." The counseling center was in an old building with pale green walls and windows facing a small park. That first morning, I was a little shaky. I'd always thought therapy was for people who were weak or couldn't control their emotions. But when I met the therapist, Dr. Angela, those thoughts faded. Angela was around 48, voice light as a breeze, kind eyes that missed nothing. She let me tell the outline of what happened without interrupting, set a cup of herbal tea in front of me, then said something I'll never forget. "What you went through has a name, Mary. It's called financial abuse and coercive control." I went still. She continued slowly, as if afraid I might not take it in. Financial abuse doesn't need physical force. It's when someone takes control of money, decides spending, or uses finances to make another person dependent. It's a form of abuse, and it leaves invisible wounds. I looked at my hands, these fingers that had managed hospital budgets for hundreds of patients, now shaking because of a truth so simple it took me a year to hear. "So I'm a victim." Angela nodded gently. Yes, but more importantly, you're not in that role anymore. The first session ended with what seemed simple homework. Write a letter to yourself at 68. Angela said, write as if you're your own friend. Don't worry about grammar. Just be honest. That night at the small desk in my Austin room, I opened my old tan notebook, the one that had recorded hungry days and then small joys. I wrote, Dear Mary, you are not at fault. You are not weak, not foolish, not to blame. You simply loved the wrong way, trusted the wrong person. That does not erase your worth. People can steal your money, but they can't take your dignity unless you let them. You're still alive, still able to smile, and that's already a win. When I closed the notebook, my hands had stopped shaking. Something rose inside me. Self-forgiveness. Angela encouraged me to rejoin community, to talk, to listen. I signed up for the church book club, where older women met every Thursday to read and discuss. The first time, I sat in the corner, listening to laughter and the way they argued about characters. Slowly, I began to speak up. One day when the group read the Joy Luck Club, I shared a bit of my story. The room went quiet for a few seconds. Then a silver-haired woman beside me said softly, I was like you once. My daughter kept all our bank cards for 15 years. I didn't think it was abuse until I read this book. We looked at each other. No more words were needed, just understanding. The kind you only recognize in someone who's lived it. From then on, I shared more. I talked about keeping a private account, locking cards, turning on two-factor authentication, reading monthly statements, and not hesitating to ask when something looks wrong. Angela said, sharing experience is a powerful way to heal. When you help someone else out of the dark, that light also shines back on you. I didn't expect that from those small conversations. An idea would slowly take shape. I asked Claire and the church to help set up a small fund for victims of financial abuse for older adults who have no one left beside them. The fund would simply cover temporary housing, legal consultations, and classes to relearn personal money management. I called it Second Chance Light, because I know not everyone gets the chance to relight their life. My health steadily improved. I ate well, slept deeply, gained back about 24 pounds. My skin started to look healthy, and the hair loss stopped. Doctor, Nina called for a check-in. When she heard me talk about Austin, she laughed. You're getting younger, Mary. Keep this up and I'll be jealous. I answered, no, I'm just finally living at my real age, not the age of fear. Claire noticed too. One evening, when I burst out laughing at a comedy show, she looked over at me, half joking, half serious. You're back. I've been waiting to hear that laugh for 3 years. I laughed even harder, tears in my eyes, but still smiling. And you're still the first one to hear it. Now I can think of Derek without struggling to breathe. The thought of him still pricks my heart, but it doesn't squeeze it anymore. I've learned this. Forgiveness isn't acceptance. It's taking the weight off your own shoulders. I still haven't read his letter, the yellow envelope lying in my desk drawer. Some nights I look at it for a long time, then set it down. Angela said, when you're ready, you'll know. Don't force yourself to reopen a wound that's just begun to close. I listened. I left it there as a reminder that we don't have to finish every story to move forward. In October, I was invited to speak at a small church workshop on preventing financial abuse. I stepped up to the lectern, hands a little shaky, but my voice steady. I used to think abuse only meant violence. But now I understand that sometimes abuse wears the face of love, of someone saying, Mom, let me handle it, while quietly taking away your right to live. In the audience, a few women nodded. Some wiped their tears. I continued, financial abuse starts with small things. When they say, give me the card, it's easier if I manage it. When they forbid you from checking statements, because you wouldn't understand when you ask to buy something, and they say, what do you need money for? All of those added together are how someone strips away your control. I ended with a smile. But I'm still here. I lost almost everything, and I got myself back. If I can do it at 68, anyone can. As I stepped down, a silver-haired woman took my hand. Thank you, she whispered. You just named a pain I was afraid to name for 12 years. I simply squeezed her hand in return. No more words were needed. That night, back home, I sat in front of Alina's photo. A small candle flickered, its light trembling across the wall. I whispered, do you see, love, I know how to name my wound now, and I know how to heal it. Then I smiled, not the forced smile of survival, but a true smile. The smile of someone who has taken back her life. A year passed since I left Sacramento. The first winter in Austin was mild, but gentle, the kind of soft cold that makes you want to brew tea and sit quietly listening to the rain outside the window. I kept my old habit, recording each expense and each small joy, as if that notebook were proof I was still living, still in control of my life. That morning, Benjamin called. His voice was as calm as always, but I could hear warmth in it. "Mary, I have an update. It's been 12 months since the repayment plan began. As of today, Derek has paid $15,612 installments, each $1,300. I was silent for a few seconds, looking out the window. A thin layer of frost covered the yard. I didn't know whether to feel relieved or hollow. Finally, I asked quietly, "How much is left?" Benjamin flipped through papers. I heard the rustle over the phone. About $53,000. Under the agreement, if they miss more than 2 consecutive installments, I'll refer the case to the district attorney and trigger criminal charges. I'm holding all the evidence, so you don't need to worry. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. "Thank you, Benjamin. I just want everything to follow the process. No more, no less." He hesitated, then continued. "One more thing, Derek wants to send you a letter, along with notes from his therapist. I've reviewed it. Nothing harmful, so I'm forwarding it for you to decide." I thanked him and asked him to mail it. When I hung up, my heart beat strangely fast. I thought I had no feelings left about that name, and still something twinged. 3 days later, the brown envelope lay on the table. I left it there all morning. Only that evening, after a prayer service at church, did I pick it up. In a quiet room, candlelight shimmering on Alina's frame, I opened the letter with hands that no longer trembled. Derek's voice appeared on the page, slow, halting, but honest. "Mom, I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm only asking you to read this. I've been seeing a therapist for 7 months. She helped me see I didn't just steal your money. I stole your trust, your peace, and the image of the mother I once loved most. I wasn't starving. I was afraid of failing, afraid of seeing Marcus disappointed. When Marcus said, 'Investing will change our lives,' I saw the easy path, and I chose the easy and cruel path. Now I know there's nothing easy about carrying guilt. I'm working at a small warehouse 40 hours a week. Every time I send a payment, I feel a little lighter, but it also hurts because I miss you. I don't dare call. I just want you to know I'm still trying to fix myself." I set the letter down and took a deep breath. No tears, no anger, just a quiet feeling, as if a storm had passed, leaving a beach strewn with debris. But the wind had stopped. I reread the last paragraph several times, not because I wanted to believe it, but because I realized this. I could read my son's letter, and my hands did not shake. Benjamin was right. When you regain control, the numbers speak for themselves. $15,600, each proof that justice isn't an abstract idea, but a repeated action on schedule, without emotion, without bargaining. I didn't reply right away. The next day, as light frost melted, I sat down and wrote a short letter, just 3 sentences. "Derek, keep paying the debt. Heal. I'm praying you'll learn the worth of an honest dollar. No love, no I miss you," but I knew it was the gentlest, most appropriate answer I could. At the end of the months, Benjamin visited during a business trip to Austin. He brought new files, financial updates, and a small envelope. "We've locked every channel they could exploit. From linked accounts and insurance to old credit profiles, everything is now in your name and protected with biometric authentication. No one can access anything without your fingerprint." I smiled. "Sounds like a spy movie." Benjamin chuckled. "In this era, seniors deserve that level of protection. And honestly, it's rare to see someone as steady as you calm through the whole process." I answered softly, "I just don't want to live in fear of someone else's signature ever again." Claire showed up after, with a flyer. "Look at this. The city library has a digital skills for seniors course, how to spot phishing email, protect your info, and manage accounts online." I laughed. "Are you calling me outdated?" She smiled kindly. "No. I want you modern enough that no one can trick you again." So I signed up. In week 1, I learned to recognize fake texts, check bank domains carefully, and report suspicious activity. In week 2, I learned to set strong passwords and store data safely. Each feature I understood made me feel a little stronger, as if the walls of a new fortress were going up. Solid. No more breaches. The instructor, a woman in her 30s, said, "The best part is Mrs. Mary isn't afraid to ask questions. People are only weak when they're afraid to learn." I smiled. I was an administrator. If I could learn to manage hospital budgets, I can learn to protect my digital wallet. That night, I went home, brewed chamomile tea, opened my account list on the computer, and looked at the clear, balanced numbers. No one else touching them, no mysterious transfers. Those numbers weren't just money, they were proof of freedom. Claire dropped by and saw me typing a password. She grinned. "You look professional." I said, "Don't forget I used to run a hospital department. Online accounts are just digital balance sheets." We both laughed. That sound hadn't filled a room so naturally in a long time, unweighted by memories. After Claire left, I sat alone. Outside, frost melted quietly, streetlights reflecting on the window pane. I looked at Alina's photo and whispered, "Say, love, I did it. I'm not just surviving. I'm living in peace." Inside me, no resentment, no why everything had returned to its place. My son learning how to be decent again. Me learning to trust myself. When the clock struck 9:00 p.m., I closed the laptop, turned out the light, and headed to bed. No fear of being jolted awake at night. No haunting memory of $42. Only stillness and safety, the kind I spent a lifetime finding again. I climbed into bed, pulled up the blanket, and smiled into the dark. For the first time, I understood deeply that justice is sometimes not punishment, but the quiet of no longer having to be on guard. I closed my eyes. Outside, the frost kept melting softly, as if the world itself were breathing lightly with me. And in that sleep, I knew at last I was truly at peace. Early morning, I made a cup of hot cocoa and stood by the window, looking at the Texas hills blushing with dawn. The sun had just lifted over the far ridge, bathing the room in a grip gentle, warm light, like a hand resting on my shoulder. Outside, last night's frost was melting on the sill. I heard Claire's footsteps from the kitchen, the smell of coffee filling the air. She leaned on the doorway and asked softly, "What are you thinking, Mary?" I smiled, turning the cup so the steam drifted up evenly, wondering what freedom tastes like. And now I know it tastes like toast with salted butter. Claire laughed, and I laughed too, not the kind of laugh you force to look strong, but a real, simple, weightless laugh. Freedom, it turns out, isn't something grand. It's being able to make your own cocoa in the morning, to spend your own money, to say no without fear of punishment. On the table, a small recorder was waiting. Today, I decided to record the final chapter of my journey, not for the court, not for any legal file, but for people who might be quietly living in the dark the way I once did. I pressed record, and my voice came slow and clear. "This is Mary, 68 years old. A year ago, I lived on half a cup of instant noodles a day in a house with no furniture. Today, I have a home, accounts in my own name, and I can breathe without fear. I used to think justice meant making someone pay, but justice is actually when you're no longer being taken from. I relearned how to live, how to trust, and most importantly, how to protect myself. If you're listening and you see yourself in this story, know that you're not alone. There are laws, and there are people like me, like Claire, like Benjamin, like therapists. We understand, and we believe you. Don't stay silent. Don't be ashamed. Help is there. You only need to knock. I stopped the recording, played back a bit, then saved the file titled, "From Instant Noodles to a New Start, The Journey of Mary." I smiled, set the recorder down, and felt I had closed a long chapter not with tears, but with a peaceful breath. At noon, Claire took me to the park nearby. The grass was still dewy. A few kids played with a golden retriever. Austin's air is always clear, as if this place was made for healing. Sitting on a wooden bench, I opened my little notebook and wrote down plans for the next year. I didn't want to run from the past anymore. I wanted to use it to help others. My plan had 3 parts. 1. Give talks at the senior center, sharing a personal financial protection checklist, how to manage PINs, statements, wills, and account access. 2. Join the Second Chance Light Network, providing legal support for older adults facing financial abuse. 3. Publish my audio journal, Not to Complain, but to show that getting back up at 68 isn't unreasonable. Claire read it and nodded. Sounds like a recovery plan. I answered, half joking, half serious. No, it's a plan to keep living properly. In the afternoon, as sunlight poured through the curtains, I took Alina's photo from the shelf. In it, she still wore that gentle smile, the one that steadied me for decades. I touched the glass lightly and said, I saved myself. Alina, may be late, but in time. I believe if she were here, she'd be proud. I helped so many people as an administrator, but only now did I learn how to save myself. That evening, a letter from Derek arrived. The envelope had the familiar handwriting, but this time I didn't hesitate. I opened it and read slowly, no choking, no trembling, just calm, unlike before. My son wrote that work was steady, he was still paying on time, and he was about to volunteer with an organization that helps victims of financial abuse. I folded the letter and put it in a box. No tears, no anger, because I know sometimes someone else's remorse isn't a gift for us. It's a reward they need to keep living. Late at night, I turned on the desk lamp and wrote a note for anyone who might find my story by chance. If someone is controlling your money, making you afraid to ask about your own account, if you have to ask permission to buy medicine or food, if you're called useless, or told you don't understand the time, stop and remember. That isn't love. That is abuse, even when no fist is raised. But you have the right to live differently. You have the right to keep your own money. And there are people who will believe you and help you. I set down the pen, feeling my heartbeat slow light as a dawn breath. Forgiveness, I realized, isn't an instant duty. It's a process. I don't have to force myself to love anyone just to look noble. I only have to stop letting resentment run my life. Outside, the sky turned a soft orange. I opened the door and stepped onto the porch. Last night's frost had mostly melted, leaving faint patches like memories. I took a deep breath. Austin's air is humid and warm, but not heavy. The sun slanted low, my shadow shortening the sign of a longer day. Claire came out with a slice of fresh toast. I took a bite. The butter melted, rich and warm. I looked at her and smiled. So this is what true freedom tastes like, ordinary, but so good it brings tears. She simply said, "You deserve it, Mary." I nodded, eyes lifting to the Texas hills, where the last rays still stretched across the sky. And in that moment, I knew my journey wasn't over. It was just changing direction from survival to guiding those still being starved. I turned and walked back inside. Light spilled through the doorway, washing over every frame, every stack of books, every note I'd reclaimed from my old life. A new day was beginning, and I was finally living fully in my own sunrise. Thank you for staying with me to the very end of this journey. If you're still listening, maybe your heart carries a wound like mine, the wound of being belittled, used, or made to forget your own worth. I only want to say this: you're not alone. There are people like me, like Claire, like so many others who fell, stood back up, and found themselves again. Tell me where you're listening from, a small town or a windy city, because maybe your story will be the rope that pulls someone else out of the dark. If this story touched you, please leave a comment, like, subscribe, and share. Not for me, but for those still suffering in silence who don't yet know there's a way out. I'm grateful for every heart that listened, and I promise in every story to come, I'll keep telling, so anyone who's been hurt can believe. Dignity doesn't fade with time. Justice is never too late, and light always finds its way.